Well, welcome to everyone, and let's start our next day, first session. And yesterday consists of three presentations. The first presentation is again by Esa Lilja from University of Helsinki. It's about heavy metal. The second presentation is from Jan Malin, and finally the last one by Vaher. Well, I think that Esa Lilja needs no additional introduction, so I would give the word to you. So please,
Okay,
be so kind.
thanks. Can we put the lights down, actually? Okay, yes, thanks.
A bit better. All right, almost everyone was here yesterday, so I'll just start. Yep. First of all, here are a couple of really quite new books on music and meaning. It's by Alan Moore, 2012, and this one from Philip Pack, 2013. And some of the ideas are more or less based on those here, but the main role is with the music anyway. Yes, all right. Really short introduction. Yesterday I talked about heavy metal and constructing the usual way of composing heavy metal, relationship with lyrics and music and the general atmosphere. This fellow, nice-looking fellow here, King Diamond, is sort of a chapter of his own, because usually he writes all the music and all the lyrics. So in his case, music and lyrics sort of interact much more in a much more serious or deep sense than in most heavy metal in general. All right. And here's Mr. Petersen in Helsinki 2 years ago. He's just turned 60 years of age, had a couple of heart attacks and subsequently stopped smoking. Good idea for a singer, I presume. But he was in really good shape 2 years ago, I have to say. He's most well known of his horror and occult themes and wide-ranging vocal ambitions. Okay, here's the guy. I don't know if you know this person. If you are from strict classical field, probably you don't. But he's a sort of not the most well-known heavy metal artist of them all. But for some reason, I have always liked the music. Right. Since 90s, he had a band called Merciful Fate, a Danish band with horror and occult themes and theatrics, stage persona. King Diamond started to develop then, or already existed, and the horror mask you just saw. For King Diamond's international recognition, rather funnily, this Parents Music Resource Center in America and the Filthy 15 list made a huge difference for King Diamond's career. A little more about that a bit later. And in the late 80s, he formed a band, King Diamond, with a bit different, I think, bit better musicians as well. And since the early 90s, both bands have been more or less active. Right. Then something about developing Dynam's concepts and themes. The first Merciful Fate albums, the early 80s, Nuns Have No Fun, Melissa, and Don't Break the Oath, were all about horror and occult. The albums based on individual songs and musically much in the spirit of new wave of British heavy metal, progressive heavy rock. New wave of British heavy metal basically means rather complex song structures, maybe much in the spirit of art rock, as I mentioned yesterday, and so on. Okay. Then, something about, a little about this. Do you remember this one? In the mid-80s, there was a huge moral panic in the US because, well, as we heard periodically, rock music or popular music destroys the morality of the youth and so on. Well, it was, I think it was jazz music in the 1920s, rock and roll in 1950s, and in the 80s it was heavy metal and so on. Nothing changes in that regard. But this was rather serious business, as you can imagine in the US. There were several Senate hearings about what to do about this business, this dangerous business of rock music. And for instance, Frank Zappa and Twisted Sisters Dee Snider were testifying against in the US Senate about these matters. Yes. And subsequently, I think it was Frank Zappa's idea to put the stickers on the warning stickers on the albums. That explicit contents or that kind of things, which of course did nothing else that raised the sales. Absolutely. To sort of guarantees that this is heavy stuff. So, yeah. Well, America is a funny place in some ways. But if you want, there's a lot of material on YouTube about these Senate hearings. I personally like Twisted Sisters, Dee Snider's speech, where U.S. Senator's wife, Tipper Gore, looks really annoyed. Well, maybe you have to see that yourself. Also, there are many sections about that in this documentary, rather recent metal headbangers journey by a Canadian anthropologist. Funny stuff, I have to tell you. Yes, but here's the PMRC's Filthy 15. The most worst music or songs ever written up to date. There are some pretty funny names there. Prince, Sheena Easton. And here are the themes. X means profane or sexually explicit lyrics. O means occult. D, A, drugs or alcohol. And V, violence. And so on. And just at a glance, it seems that the US senators' wives were mostly concerned about sex. So, all right. And funnily enough, heavy metal is rather well overtly presented here. 9 out of 15 songs is heavy metal. There's a rather natural explanation for that. In the mid-80s, heavy metal was the most popular music style in West Europe and United States, basically. So it's only natural that it was a bit more extreme than the other styles of popular music at the time. But really, these to modern ears, these songs don't sound so dangerous or offensive or whatever, I think, compared to some of the stuff that is written today. Well, but for Merciful Fate, this was a really good and important thing. I'll play you the song in a few minutes. Here's some quotes from the Rolling Stone magazine 2015. And King Diamond himself says that it seems funny because today what people are writing about makes those times seem so quaint. And even back then, we didn't think what we were writing about was very extreme. I think we were on tour on 85 and we saw an article with us listed in USA Today, and we were all like, wow, somebody's writing about us. We can't believe it. We barely set foot in the US and we are already that big. Then we realized it was a sort of a shit list and the whole thing was just pathetic. We thought they must be really bored and have time for this. How they saw those songs said more about them than it did about us. They had some really perverted minds. It was funny, ridiculous, surprising. Thanks for the promotion, Tipper. Well, you can imagine for the Danish band in those times to be acknowledged in the main US newspapers. Right, and here's the. Actually, what I think is that because there's so much sex in this list, they needed to have something else as well, occult and drugs and so on. And just by chance, Merciful Fates into the Coven fit into the needs of this list. Let's just hear a bit. Musically speaking, this is plain Baroque, actually. Is it too loud or? Another King Diamond's opinion, really serious guy here with his Christmas album. So funny stuff, that one. And here's a short interview in 87 around, I think.
Fate, lead singer King Diamond is a Satanist who makes no bones at all about his beliefs. He's declared in the song, "I renounce Christ the Deceiver."
I know people like to be scared, just a little bit, and they like that because they go watching all the horror movies. And that's another thing. People don't like our lyrics, because it says Satan of it. They go and watch Halloween or whatever it is. So why don't they just accept our lyrics as, if they don't want to look for messages, then don't. Just take us horror stories, that's all. I'm not up to preaching to people.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Then to King Diamond, the band. Starting since '86, he started to develop this concept thing. Basically, there's a background story in each album. This was the first one, rather loose. Then on the story, somewhat resembles the picture of Dorian Gray and so on. And musically, this was more polished than the Merciful Fate stuff. And starting this point, he started to write everything by himself. Sometimes with the aid of a Swedish guitar player, but anyway, you must know that King Diamond not only sings, but he basically plays all the other instruments as well, and so on. Okay, it's just a quick glance. Abigail was a full-blown concept album, and them and Conspiracy as well. Now with a sequel, so it gets bigger and bigger all the time. The stories, I mean. Here are some of the subsequent ones. Diamond albums have complete narratives, and Merciful Fate albums usually don't. Individual songs. I think you can see a theme here pretty obviously. All right. Then something about vocal persona. And this is much based on Alan Moore's and Phil Dagg's books that are there somewhere. Right. When we listen to a track, our attention is focused particularly on the identity of the singer. Yes, a basic human thing to do, to pay attention to human voice. And persona, according to Dagg, is an aspect of personality as perceived by others. And there are 3 levels on this persona. Performer, which is a real person, singer as a human being or a social being. Then the performance persona, so to speak, the singer's alter ego, the image that is created in our minds when we are listening to the singer and perhaps know what he or she looks like. And then the protagonist, which is the song character or song personality. And here just a couple of examples, really general characterizations these. So if we think of Elvis Presley, many times, we know a lot about his personal life. So his sort of real persona was very public in those days. People knew when he went to army, when he gets married, and so on, so on. Yeah. And this real person got, I think, pretty much mixed into his performance persona, the one he was on stage. So, whereas opera singers such as Karita Mattila, we don't know so much about her personal life, but everyone who is involved with opera knows many of her protagonists from several operas and so on. And of course, the stage persona, performance persona, creates some sort of images by itself. And so, and then how this framework works with King Diamond. First of all, we don't know, or we didn't know, almost anything about his King Diamond as a real person, basically. And it was a conscious choice for him not to be in public. In the 80s, 90s, or even in the early 2000s, he really rarely appeared in public without this theater mask. And when he did, always with black sunglasses and so on, and didn't like to reveal his real name and so on. Which I think is pretty sort of a really sensible choice to do. If you want to do some work in private, you don't want the press on your front door all the time. Yes. And in America, where he lives, actually, he has been living for 30 years or something like that. The bad press, or to be haunted by PMRC and so on, the right-wing religious groups, would be pretty much something that you want to keep your private life to yourself, I could imagine. It's a short example on.
Gentlemen, and this, I think, will appeal. We opened our show the other day, and now again with what you call what is of the moment. I tell you all the time that I deal in nostalgia, but I dabble greatly in what is of the moment. And the rock adherents out there, the rock addicts, would love to be reminded that in such magazines as Metal Mania, that one of the facts of life is that a young man named King Diamond has sold so far, and he's from Denmark, 150,000 albums, LPs, cassettes. He's a man with a very royal-sounding name, Keith, and that his name is King Diamond. And King, can I shake your hand and say that it's a pleasure? And so let me ask you first of all, your main market, I think, is in America, not even in Denmark, based on a few of my friends here who know your stuff, right?
America's our main market, and then Germany, Holland, Belgium.
Right.
But Denmark is so tiny, we don't actually have a heavy metal scene there.
Nothing like that, huh? Can I ask you, when you were born, what name was on your birth certificate? Was it King Diamond on the birth certificate?
Yeah.
You serious?
Yeah.
You believe that, Keith? Get on. What do you say, Ed?
Could be.
Ed is a policeman from Irvington, New Jersey. He's the rapping policeman. He's going to make an album soon, too. So this is King Diamond.
Well, this is funny, yes. All right. All right. So, private life secured. The closest one can get to King Diamond as a real person is through his singing and performances. Actually, of course, we only know the performance persona, which is pretty much the idea everyone has in his or her mind, and it is different for everybody in some sense, basically. And then the third layer or level, protagonist. Whereas each performing singer, of course, changes the protagonist from song to another. It's a different character in different songs. In King Diamond's songs, there are usually several characters within one song, and King Diamond's plays all those characters. So in some sense, it's always sort of a one-man opera with several characters, but only one actor, at least. Oh. And starting from this to the end of this presentation, I will focus on these two albums and some examples about vocal persona of King Diamonds. Right. These two albums, the story happens in a house called Avon, which is actually pretty much in the same atmosphere that you know that house from Hitchcock's Psycho. The house isn't the only resemblance of these stories, actually. Here's a short synopsis. King, who is the main character, falls into madness because of his grandmother and the voices in the house called Amen. And the sequel, King returns from mental asylum and moves back to Amen, still haunted by them. And here are the characters and their voices, more or less like this. King is a middle-ranged, and then grandma, evil grandma, in a wheelchair. Then King's mother, King's sister, name is Missy, and Dr. Landau, how do you say it? Landau. Landau is good. Who is a shrink, and them, well, the evil spirits, and a priest who doesn't sing, only speaks. Right. And then there's maybe the most important character, so to speak, is the narrator, which is in King's head, actually, his thoughts. So he can move freely from one voice to another, from extremely high to normal range, so on. Oh, and then the plot. Go this just to get you oriented on this stuff. Then starts at young King, his mother and sister welcoming grandmother home from a mental asylum. King investigates strange voices and discovers grandmother having a tea party, seemingly alone, though with the teacups and kettles floating in the air. King is invited in the room to sit in his grandmother's chair. King is sent back to bed, but only after staring into his grandmother's eyes, whereupon she instructed him to forget what he saw. Grandma tells that she will teach about Amen over a cup of tea. Grandma cuts King's sleeping mother's hand and adds her blood to the teapot. The voices of the house begin to affect King with a drug-like effect. King's sister Missy tries to convince King that they should do something to help their mother, who is unconscious under their power. But his judgment is clouded due to his altered state. He refuses to call for help and cuts the phone line. At tea, Missy interrupts and breaks the teapot. They, in response to the breaking of their teapot, chop Missy into bits with an axe and throw the remains into the fireplace in the kitchen. Rather cheerful, yeah. King attacks her his grandmother, and kills her with an axe. The voices of Eamon continue to haunt the boy as he is questioned by police and incarcerated in an asylum. Right, here's the first album, The Clans. And this cheerful album ends with a phone call. Okay, right. Here are the songs. Just to hear grandmother's voice a bit.
Who's this? You're dead.
In a way, yes. Now listen. Are you still there?
I'm still here, girl.
Come to the old house tonight. There's quite a few people here who would love to see you.
It's starting all over again.
Right. And so this was the end of the first album. The most examples I'm going to play, musical examples, are from Conspiracy, just because we don't have so much time. Well, then King returns to Avon to reclaim his place as heir of the house. Here. However, unanswered questions about his sister's death, his mother's involvement with his therapist, and his own madness all prove to be difficult, if not insurmountable obstacles. He makes a deal with them to return control of the house to them in exchange for the chance to see his now dead sister Missy again. He believes she can help answer some of his questions. An agreement is reached, and Missy returns from the grave nightly to help King uncover some of the mysteries from them. As a spirit, however, she cannot save him from the plot against him, try as she may to warn him. His mother and his doctor have conspired to get rid of him permanently in order to inherit the house themselves. While they think they are ultimately successful, the album closes with King's promise to torture and haunt them forever from beyond the grave. Mother and doctor sedate King, cremate him alive, and secretly bury him in Mrs. grave. Cheerful stories. Yes. All right. Okay. Right. Then the next, I will play this first song, all of it. It's 9 minutes, but and we can read the lyrics at the same time. And there are a couple of different personas here. I want to play one song as a whole to also to give you a sort of an idea of his compositional style and structuring the whole piece. So, okay. time to save some time. Musically speaking, the songs are much structured in different separate blocks, basically, which is a general characteristic of new wave of British heavy metal. But many styles before that, let's say rondo form, basically, you take blocks, they have something to do with each other or not. And Scott Joplin's ragtime pieces and like that. It's a basic way of structuring pieces, which will end in a moment. And as I think you hear it, it doesn't matter whether you like or not this music, but it requires a certain amount of technical skill from each player to be able to do this stuff. Right. All right. Need to move on. Okay. Now only shorter examples. A bit. Right. And now the pact with them. Just to hear you listen to some of their voices. Okay. I think I will speed things up and, well, I think you get the idea. Next, King lies to his therapist that he's all right and doesn't hear them at all. And, in return, he gets a visit from his mother, and although Missy has warned King that mother and therapist are actually plotting against him, which they seemingly actually are, and so on and so on. His mother visiting and actually, yeah, doesn't turn out so well. Now for the ending section. It's the ending of the thing.
Who's gonna set fire to the coffin? I think your wife to be should do it together. While I keep the demon inside with my secrets. So it's into the coffin, use the torch, and then we put the remains into his sister's grave. Right? Yes. Let it be done.
Right, okay. And the album ends with a long instrumental with these words after it. Right. Rather cheerful. Yes, but still, I think that there are two possible interpretations about the story. The more obvious that Grandma is a witch, them are real, and they killed Missy. Mother and Dr. Lando plot and murder King. Yeah, that's what appears to happen here. Or the whole thing is about that King is seriously mentally ill, which he certainly is. Anyway, and he kills Missy, Grandma, and finally himself if he actually died at the end, that is. But as in many movies, this is left open to interpretations or imagination and so on. So, right. And to the actual persona, now he's about 60 years old, family man, and loosened up a bit, maybe. Nowadays you can see him without a mask and glasses and so on. Maybe it's possible to reveal his sort of real person at this time. Certainly it wasn't 30 years ago or so, something like that. Okay. Was there anything else? No. And now here's King with Grandma, of course. Grandma performs in, Grandma is in all the performances, basically, more or less. Yeah, all right, but that's my thing for the day, and hope you have some comments and questions and so on. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you for the presentation, and maybe some of you have comments or remarks on that.
Did he really sang all the parts himself?
Yes.
All the operatic parts?
Yes, he does all the vocal parts himself. Yes, basically, yeah. He didn't do it very well in the early 80s, but he was practicing and developing all the sound, forming the sound and so on. Yes. Yes. Right.
How word of common heavy rock actually take this kind of it's some new genre in heavy rock, all this ocean, but or
yes.
it is some common thing. How you think? What was the reception actually?
Reception of
Of this kind of music, of this kind of album.
I think them was well back then, late 80s, was probably the most popular album of King Diamond, which in this subgenre means some hundreds of thousands records or something like that. Yeah. Although nowadays we don't even speak about record sales because of the internet and so on. But obviously, King Diamond or Merciful Fate are not the mainstream heavy metal thing. Yes. But he has a lot of fans who seem to be loyal and sort of, in that sense, or follow his career and and his music, basically. Yes. But in general, heavy metal these days, as we spoke earlier, it got fragmented, even in the mid 80s, roughly, like this, to the light side and to the extreme side, and it has continued to fragment even more. So nobody cannot name all the subgenres. Here we have Black Death, Doom, grind, whatever type of things. So as in most types of popular culture or culture in general, I think the options there are more and more different kind of slots that people can choose from. Whereas in the 1960s, everybody knew the Beatles, basically. In America, because they had a TV performance, and in the 80s in Finland we had 2 television channels, basically. If you appeared on the TV, whole nation knew who you are. But it's not like that anymore. And so, because of the internet, I think. So there's no real answer to that question.
Maybe you can also say some words about words and music, because in your yesterday's presentation you mentioned that actually in heavy metal music it's a common practice that there are pre-existing structures and the texts are in a way fit into these structures, but here it seems that it's based on
Yes, that's right. Yes, thanks. Yes, King Diamond, it seems to be working text-based. Although I think both processes are working together. There's some sort of music that, probably he has written the text or at least the story first, and then cut it into individual songs. But then there is some music already existing, and then these two, text and music, start to discuss with each other.
Yes, I think sometimes it can be felt, especially within the longer songs, which consist of many different sections based on different riffs.
Yes, and different moods and different
characters
and ideas.
And so on.
Yes. In that sense, this is much nearer to musical or opera style than the let's say, average heavy metal musician or composer. Yes. Thanks.
Bishop, yes, please.
There is a Norwegian scholar who had the mantra, the news is the audience.
What is the audience?
The news is the audience.
Mm-hmm.
The news
Yes.
inspiring
Right.
poet
Yeah.
is the audience.
Yeah.
In the text,
Right.
within the text, news tell me
Yes.
actually
Right.
the audience. them, are they linked with this audience?
Them, you mean these evil
They
spirits?
speak to him.
Hmm?
They speak to him, they are inspiring.
Ah, actually, well, if you like, you might think like that, but to be honest, I don't think so. Well, it's like you can ask Alfred Hitchcock the same thing, basically. So I think it's only a form of art and making up these stories. And
He could be grandma.
oh, we certainly could, but I think the answer is much more boring. That is a guy that lives very normal life in middle Texas and so on, and gets but it could be. No one knows. But
Well, boring is the most terrible thing.
yes, maybe so.
It's an album, but has it been staged? Because it's a very colorful story you put.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Not as a whole. There are only some characters who, from different albums in concerts, who appear in different songs, such as Grandma is a regular visitor, and Medieval Monks are another. But in a form of music videos, some individual songs have been staged or acted, and also you can probably find a lot of those in the internet. Yes. So yes and no. Right.
Yeah, right.
Yes, there's a lot of academically oriented people in this audience, and I'm one of them. I
Very
wonder
good.
among modern classical Finnish composers like those we know, Kaija Saari, Magnus Lindberg, and the others, is there anyone who is maybe more, is there a bridge between this type of music and this type of music, or any composer who is more influenced by?
This is in some ways a bit difficult question, but I can guess. Because in the less and less, I would say, less and less borders between the so-called art music and popular music, which wasn't so in the 90s when I was in an association, national association for young composers. I write classical stuff myself and so on. Then the division was extremely harsh. I have always done both popular and classical, so to speak. But other guys my age, then they had listened to and liked heavy metal and rock music, but they didn't say it. They didn't admit. Now they do when they are in their 40s, like me. Now they have courage to sort of confess that I really do like Black Sabbath myself. I always like. It's really weird. And and nowadays, like Jaakko Kuusisto, who does a lot of sort of crossover things. It's a normal thing today. But I don't know if Magnus Lindberg or Kaija Saariaho still admits
Maybe
to
he
that.
liked because the young Magnus Lindberg is quite macho actually. As you know, his orchestral pieces, I think,
Yes,
based
yes.
on these baroque structures of not the basso continuo but the chaconne actually. Yes,
Yeah.
Almost all compositions by Magnus Lindberg until mid-80s, I think, are based on chaconne-like thinking. And based on power chords, so to speak, in orchestra, which are colored.
Yes,
So
yes,
maybe
yes,
like
yeah.
you never know.
Yeah.
Perhaps not Kaija Saariaho. She's too
It's a bit more
poetic
in a
more poetic
more
and,
small micro type of things. But, yes. Yeah, but that's right. That I said that even in the 90s, and everybody hated the comments.
Oh, too.
Yes. Yeah, but
there's a direct connection, of course, with
yes.
progressive rock perhaps more, but
yes.
sometimes they are not so.
Yes, but of course the professionals, of course, they are aware of.
But in a new way, this is very close to progressive rock music
yes.
in a way how they build up their formal structures.
Yes, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yes.
Gerhard.
Sorry for my voice.
Yeah.
But what about the sources for him, for King Diamond? What are the sources and inspirations, or from where he takes his ideas, which what we have listened today is something resembling radio play or radio like a story staged for radio and something like that. What can you say about this?
Well, not much. Only guessing, basically. Only guessing. Where do people get their inspirations? I think it's from, as any artist, from different sources. If I hear something, I just reuse it, basically, and fit in to another context, and so on. I think it's a basic way of working for anyone who writes music. So.
Yeah, because for me, nobody is existing in an empty space.
That's right.
Even if somebody exposes him or herself as something unique, if you dig more deeply, or you get more background information from where it comes, and it comes from somewhere, even if this artist is not revealing it or is not present in it, or it is maybe him or herself not conscious about it, but there are sources.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always. Yeah.
And this seems kind of double. Like in one sense, it seems quite advanced in thinking. On the other hand, it seems looking now with a distance to it, quite naive or quite somehow simple. But it's a kind of melange of this, and it would be for me much more interesting from where it comes. Okay, it's part of the time, and also part of the use of electronic instruments of this time. So there, I think it can be tracked back, of course.
Yes, absolutely. It even wouldn't be very hard to track those things back just by listening.
Not only just by listening, but to make research around
what was going on
he grew up, etc.
Yes, and there are pretty obvious things in the early and mid 80s. There were a lot of certain types of horror movies available, and some of the things are pretty much in line with those and that sort of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Interesting thing.
So
what's that?
There are no more questions. Then thank you again. And
all right.
we'll
Thank
go
you.
on with our
Thank you. Pleasure.